So as soon as I say it's probably live now, but it takes a minute. It updates. It has to go from Zoom to Facebook. And you go by Sanger or Lumino?
Sanger. Yeah,
All right.
Sanger. Lumino Films and Sanger.
Gotcha.
Jane.
All right. We are officially live with Jane Sanger with Lumino Films, talking about women in film. Hey, how are you, Jane? All the way from the UK, correct?
Yes. Yeah, just outside London in the country in UK. And it's really great to be on here. Thank you so much, Ted.
You and I met, thank you. You're my first international guest now that this whole thing seems to be changing the way that I'm doing it. And I'm glad because we were talking before on Twitter of how I could get you on the show. And then this new technology made it possible. So who knew? So thank you for being patient and thank you for coming on the show. All right. So I want to take a deep dive in a minute into films and women in film, but tell them a little bit about you, Jane.
Okay. So I started very early in everything to do with creative things. I was a child actress, and then I made puppets when I was 13, and with my brother we made the whole all the puppets and wrote the plays, and we went around children's birthday parties and put on these shows. So I was always doing, right from an early age, something along those lines. And I went to Lane Theatre Arts, which is a big drama school here in England for Saturday classes. My mother was teaching there. She was an elocution teacher. It's very old fashioned now.
Say that again. I loved how you said it.
Yeah. Elocution teacher. So she would be, she's not alive now. She'd be in her 90s, but it was a very silly, really. It was a kind of way of speaking like the Queen, you know, and people wanted to speak like the, you know, a very kind of RP accent, English accent, and that's what she taught in schools and in drama school. We don't have that now, but yeah. So I started going there, and then on to university. Always studying, singing, dancing, and acting. And later on, I have a big family of five girls, and in between, I taught drama. And then when my youngest was 14, she said, well, Mum, I want to be a film actress, because I was obviously at school. I taught theatre. And okay, that's a tall order, but you know, we started on the on the trajectory, and I thought, oh, I really love this. You know, maybe I could do this. And I just threw myself in. I offered myself, you know, to maybe location find, or even making the tea, or, you know, whatever. And then I thought, right, that's it. I'm going to make a film. And I made my first film called Blackberry Girl. Do you remember Blackberries, the phones?
Yes,
this was about
absolutely.
8 years ago.
I could listen to you speak all the time. The way you say Blackberry, how you can't even do it. When you say Blackberry, it sounds so proper and wonderful.
Okay.
What was the impetus behind that film? What made you, I know what led up to it, but why that particular topic? Why that particular film?
Well, it was because, you know, it was all new. You have to remember that phones were new, and my youngest daughter was obsessed with it. Of course, everyone's obsessed with their phone now, but she was obsessed with her Blackberry. So it was Blackberry Girl, and it was all about this girl who had her face, you know, like this in the phone, and walking to school, she had like this, and on the bus, it was like this. So I just made this little film, and about the obsession of a young girl with her phone. It was all new then, and it got 120,000 hits on YouTube. I thought, yeah, I can do this. You know, I very foolishly, not knowing there was a whole lot more, but you know, I tried. So that set me off, and I started making short films, which I love. And I made my first feature film this summer. And I'm also studying, I went back to uni for a short course at the National Film and Television School. I don't know if you've heard of that in America, but it's our kind of leading film school. And I'm studying, doing writing for TV. So we were going to get to pitch our projects to really important people, but of course the coronavirus stopped all that. But yeah, it'll come back. We'll get there in the end. So yes, everything to do with film and television, I love.
And why women in film? That you came up, I believe you came up with that topic. So women in film, why that topic? Do you feel like the industry is becoming better, worse, or do we need more work as far as women in film? And I'm assuming it's not just behind the scenes like you are, but the acting part too, and pretty much anything. What was your impetus behind that show title?
Yeah, the women in film, I'm very interested because I think everybody knows now there's only 17% across the industry of women who are directors, and only 4% in the Hollywood blockbuster, type of films. So there's a lot of work to be done. I think traditionally it was always men, men producing, men directing, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think perhaps at school, where my girls went to school, it's not even mentioned, go into film or television to be a producer, a presenter. So it needs starting at the grassroots and, introducing to girls that this is a great career. And I don't think that in the UK, it's certainly not. It can't be in the world, because the US are just the same. They have got a very low percentage of women in the industry. So except in, the traditional things like makeup and costume and stuff like that. So I thought, well, I'll be a good example. I started making film, going into the film industry quite late in life. I was like nearly 50. And again, I think that's quite groundbreaking, because a lot of women think, oh, I'll just relax now. All my kids are, grown up or something, and I've raised them and whatever. But I thought, I've got a bit of space in life, and I can do something I really want to do, and I absolutely love it. I really, really do love it. So
where do you come up with your topics? Where do you come up with your focus? And I want to encourage people, you can't see this, Jane, but because you're on your phone, sometimes you're in, sometimes you're out, but your voice and what you're saying, everybody can hear. So it just, when you go back and look, go, why did you tell me that, Ted? But I want people can hear you clearly. So it's totally good. What do you do? How are you coming up with your ideas? Because obviously you were inspired originally because that was the craze then. Blackberries were new, and you saw your daughter and she was obsessed with it. How do you come up with the ideas for your films, your short films?
Well, I've got two main topics, and if I could put them all into one, that is great. So the first thing I like is social issues. It's just something I'm interested in. So I've made a film on child sex trafficking and domestic abuse and bullying, those kind of subjects, because I feel that when they are put into a film, it gets to a wider audience. People are interested, and then that might make them think, or perhaps they hadn't thought about that subject, before. And I'm very luckily going to direct a feature film about cyberbullying called Tell Me Why. We haven't quite finished funding for that yet, but we've got a lot of American investors actually, and we're looking for a few more, but I'm hoping to film that this year. After this horrible corona thing's died out, we can get going again. And that is a story about,
where did that idea come from?
Well, it was actually written by a friend of mine's daughter, who's also associated with my daughter. They're not close friends, but they work together. They're friends, but not close friends. And she wrote this fantastic thing about what she suffered when she was 15. She's 20 now, and in a short film, and it won quite a lot of awards. And then she wrote it into a full feature. It's very poignant, very touching, and also, is something that a lot of young people have experienced. So it's great to get that out, and maybe parents don't always know what their children are going through, and so it gets it to a very wide audience, I think.
I think bullying itself, has always been bad. Seems to be worse pre-corona, of course. But cyberbullying can continue no matter what. And there sometimes
I know.
you have no face with it. Sometimes you don't even know the person who's cyberbullying. It's just such a scary world that these kids are in. And so I love that you're telling that story. I serve on a couple of boards that have to do with trafficking, another topic that is just people don't realize it, and you bringing it to life on film really does make an impact. When people see a film about it and they actually can see what's going on instead of just hearing about it, makes a huge
Yes.
difference, a huge difference. So how does it work? What's the difference between a short film and a feature film for you? Obviously you talked about funding, which I want to get into, but what's the difference for you? Is it just because it's on a bigger scale? How does that work?
Yeah, it's obviously short films, people, it's very rare to make money off them. So, they're more like a calling card or a hobby in a way, because you're very lucky to, I don't know what it's like in America, but to sell it to a broadcaster here, a short film, you might get a few £100. Well, it might have taken you a few thousand to make that
Right.
short film. So really, it's not great. So if you want to make it your career, you need to make feature films. But showing the short films and winning awards, then investors will say, oh wow, that was good. Maybe she can make a bigger one. And of course, feature
Right.
films take a lot more time and everything else, or the organization, because they're longer, by nature.
You have a unique perspective because you are an actor and you were a child actress and you have that eye. Do you think that that makes it different when you are directing a film, when you have that perspective and you're able to use both sides of that brain, the director and the actor side?
Yeah, I think there is a name, isn't there? I think it's called like, there's different directors who come from acting, and I taught. I don't know if I mentioned that, but I taught acting in between children.
Jane, we might have lost you. Come back, Jane. There you are. But we can't hear you, Jane. Try again. Well, this is what happens with live. It is, I can see Jane, but I can't hear her. All right, so since Jane has disappeared from the world, we are going to try it again, Jane, one more time. I can see you, I just can't hear you. It's hard on the phone. It's laptops, it's phone. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Here's what we can do. We can see Jane, but we can't hear her. So it's Jane Sanger, Lumino Films. I'm going to have her make some comments and do some cool things later on. But you obviously can follow her. I've tagged Lumino Films. I've tagged Jane. I want you to reach out. I want you to look at her films. And then when we're finished, I'm going to have Jane share in the comments later on after the show how you can reach out, how you can get involved in her films, how you can be a supporter, a fundraiser, a funder for what she's doing. Cyberbullying is such a horrific thing that's going on in our world. And I read some articles where it has increased, of course, since we've all been sequestered and quarantined. So, Jane, we cannot hear you. We can see you, but we certainly appreciate you. So if you can hear me, we're going to sign off. And then if you can just on the show, make comments, share with people how they can hear you, how they can sponsor you, how they can see you. And hold on, you're trying to connect to audio. Can you hear us? So Jane Sanger, people, we appreciate you, Jane. Connections are crazy. What are you going to do in this world? So make sure you reach out to Jane, get involved with films. Her message is amazing. So thank you so much, Jane. You were awesome.